The galaxy was trembling, and not from any natural phenomenon. It was the impending arrival of the Earth's fleet, a fleet that had once been thought of as nothing more than a forgotten outpost in the vast reaches of the cosmos. The galaxies had seen many conquerors, empires rising and falling, each thinking they were the one who would rule forever. But now, something had shifted. Something had changed, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that it wasn't the empires of old that held the true power. It was humanity. On the bridge of the Zara, an enormous warship under the command of the alien warlord, Chaz-Zar, the atmosphere was tense. His advisors, once so certain of the galaxy's unshakable order, stood in stunned silence. For centuries, Chaz-Zar and his fleet had been the most feared entity in the galaxy. They had destroyed, conquered, and subjugated countless species. His ships were invulnerable, his tactics unmatched. They ruled through fear, and the galaxy had obeyed. But now they were facing something that made even the mighty Zara tremble. Humanity. Chaz-Zar clenched his fists, his clawed fingers digging into the hard, cold surface of the control panel. For the first time in his career, doubt crept into his mind. He could feel it in the whispers of his officers, the uncertain murmurs spreading throughout the fleet. These were the same officers who had once crushed civilizations with ease. But they were afraid. Afraid of what was coming. The transmission came in without warning, piercing the silence. It was Earth's transmission, a direct message to Chaz-Zar's command. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, steady, and filled with an undeniable sense of purpose. This is General Sarah Hunter of the United Earth Fleet. Chaz-Zar, you are no longer the most powerful force in this galaxy. Your time is over. Chaz-Zar's grip tightened on the console, his eyes narrowing with rage and disbelief. It had taken centuries for his empire to reach this point, and now, in a matter of weeks, humanity had turned the tables. He had heard whispers of humanity's rise, tales of human fighters, their ingenuity, and their relentless spirit. But he never believed it could come to this. He had thought of humans as nothing more than a primitive species, not even worth noticing. He was wrong. They're coming, one of his advisors whispered, his voice trembling. The humans are on their way to destroy us, to annihilate everything we've built. The warlord's gaze shifted toward the holographic display in front of him, where Earth's fleet appeared on the map, moving closer with each passing moment. His fleet was massive, but humanity had come prepared. They had unlocked technologies that rivaled even Chaz-Zar's greatest weapons, and their ships were equipped with unrelenting firepower. The human fleet wasn't afraid. They weren't retreating. They were advancing with a singular purpose, to bring down the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. Chaz-Zar had once ruled by fear, but now he felt it, fear, rising in his chest. The fear of the unknown, of a species he had never truly understood. Humans were unpredictable. They had the will to fight, to survive, no matter the cost. They had something no other species had, a belief that they would always overcome. Suddenly, a voice from the comms broke the silence once more, this time with an urgency that chilled Chaz-Zar to the bone. They're on the move, Commander. The first wave of human ships is entering our territory. Chaz-Zar's eyes flickered with cold fury. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We will not bow to these primitive creatures. If they want war, they'll get it. But even as he gave the orders, a deep, gnawing feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. What if this wasn't just another rebellion? What if humanity wasn't like the others? What if they could do what no one else had ever done, take down an empire that had stood for centuries? The warlord didn't want to admit it, but the fear lingered, a quiet whisper in the back of his mind. He could feel the weight of it growing heavier. The galaxy feared humanity. But the truth, Chaz-Zar realized as he stared out at the approaching fleet, was that he feared them more. The Zaran warship trembled as it accelerated toward the outskirts of Earth space, the engines thrumming in sync with the growing tension on the bridge. Chaz-Zar stood at the helm, his claws gripping the cold surface of the command console as his advisors scurried to their stations, preparing for the inevitable battle. His once confident demeanor had now shifted, replaced by a nervous energy that even the most hardened soldiers aboard could feel. Outside the viewport, Earth's fleet loomed, an unyielding wall of steel and firepower. Ships of all sizes, from sleek battle cruisers to massive dreadnoughts, filled the horizon. There was no mistaking it now, humanity had not only arrived, they were ready to fight, ready to win. The Warlord's eyes narrowed as he studied the fleet on the holographic map, his mind racing to devise a plan. "We've underestimated them," Chaz muttered to himself. It wasn't the first time he had acknowledged his mistake, but it was the first time he felt the full weight of the consequences. This wasn't just a minor skirmish. The human fleet was organized, armed with weapons that were unlike anything he had ever encountered. They were fierce, relentless, and, most dangerously, unpredictable. "Commander," a voice called from behind him. It was Still, his second-in-command, the alien whose loyalty to the Zara had been unquestionable until this very moment. "The human fleet is advancing. They've already begun launching fighter squadrons. Should we begin preparing for the counterattack?" Chaz turned slowly, his eyes dark with contemplation. "No. We'll wait for their first strike. Let them underestimate us once more. They're overconfident, and that will be their downfall." Still raised an eyebrow but said nothing, following his commander's orders with a resigned air. He too could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the subtle tension that gripped the Zaran fleet. They had faced countless enemies, but something about this human force felt different. It wasn't just their strength, it was their determination. They were willing to sacrifice everything, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. The first wave of human fighters rocketed toward the Zaran fleet. Small but deadly, they darted through the stars, their speed and agility giving them the advantage in the initial engagement. Chaz's heart skipped a beat as he watched the enemy ships get closer on the tactical map. He had expected them to attack in waves, slowly wearing down his defenses, but what he didn't anticipate was how fast they were adapting. Their movements were calculated, precise, every human ship coordinated with military perfection, every shot hitting its mark. "Prepare the shields," Chaz barked, his voice steady but tinged with a rare hint of urgency. "Get the main cannons ready to fire. These humans will learn to respect us." Just as the order left his lips, the first of the human fighters collided with the Zaran defenses. The Zaran ships fired back with overwhelming force, their energy cannons lighting up the dark void of space. The initial blasts sent several of the human ships spiraling into the distance, their engines flaring with the intensity of the destruction. But what Chaz didn't expect was the second wave, a surprise attack that came from behind, flanking his ships with a level of precision that shocked him. His eyes widened as the realization hit. They weren't just fighting, they were outthinking him. The human ships weren't simply attacking, they were maneuvering, testing, probing his defenses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment was coming faster than Chaz was ready for. "Commander, they're adapting faster than we predicted," Still shouted. "They're using our own tactics against us." Chaz's mind raced as he tried to counter the attack, but the damage was already done. His fleet had taken substantial hits, and for the first time, the Zaran warlord felt the sting of defeat. He had underestimated humanity, assuming they would follow the same predictable patterns as every other species he had conquered. But these humans were different. They were resourceful. They were relentless. And worst of all, they were willing to fight with every ounce of their being, not for conquest, but for survival. Suddenly, another explosion rocked the ship. The command center's lights flickered, and the viewports went dark for a split second before the backup systems kicked in. Chaz's gaze snapped to the console, watching in disbelief as the human ships began to surround them, cutting off their retreat. The realization settled in like a cold, suffocating weight, they were trapped. "Commander, we've lost the upper hand," Still said, his voice filled with both shock and fear. "The humans are flanking us from all sides. If we don't act quickly, we'll be overrun." Chaz's mind spun, trying to formulate a plan. But deep down, he knew the truth, they weren't just fighting against Earth's fleet. They were fighting against something far more powerful, the human will. And that was a force that couldn't be defeated with guns, weapons, or even the might of the Zaran fleet. The human fleet was closing in, and Chaz-Zar had one last, desperate thought before he gave the order to fight to the bitter end. We have misjudged them. We were never the ones in control. The Zaran warlord, Chaz-Zar, stood at the helm of his flagship, his mind racing as the human fleet closed in. The ship's hull groaned under the weight of the damage inflicted by the relentless human assault. The shields were barely holding, their energy draining with each passing second. The situation was deteriorating faster than he could have ever imagined. His fleet, once the mightiest force in the galaxy, was now at the mercy of these human invaders. Commander, Still said, his voice strained as he looked over the damage reports. We've lost most of our forward shields. The engines are compromised. If they keep up this pressure, we'll be sitting targets. Chaz-Zar's claws clenched in frustration. He had fought and conquered countless civilizations, but never had he faced an enemy like this. The humans weren't just attacking, they were systematically tearing apart his defenses with precision and strategy, targeting weak spots, adapting to every countermeasure he threw at them. His heart pounded in his chest as the unthinkable began to sink in. They are going to defeat us. For the first time, Chaz-Zar's mind turned inward. He had long believed the Zara to be invincible, their dominance unchallenged in the vast expanse of the galaxy. But now, humanity had shattered that illusion. And what was worse, they weren't simply fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival. We need to make contact with the other fleets, now. Chaz-Zar barked, his mind shifting into full damage control mode. Reinforcements should have arrived by now. Why haven't they? Still hesitated for a moment before responding, his voice grave. Commander, there are no reinforcements. We've lost all communication with the rest of the fleet. It appears the humans have jammed our long-range communications. The weight of the words hit Chaz-Zar like a physical blow. There was no rescue coming. They were truly alone. The entire fleet, the very empire that had once crushed species with ease, was on the brink of collapse. Are we still receiving signals from the human fleet? Chaz-Zar asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Still nodded, his face pale. Yes, Commander. They're broadcasting a message on all channels. They're offering a final ultimatum. Chaz-Zar's eyes narrowed, a mix of anger and frustration clouding his vision. He had no intention of surrendering. No. He would fight to the bitter end. Put the message through, he ordered. The bridge fell silent as the transmission began to play. The face that appeared on the screen wasn't one of an admiral, or a seasoned officer, it was a human child. Her face was young, no older than 12, with dark eyes that radiated defiance and something else, resolve. Chaz-Zar's jaw tightened as she spoke, her voice calm and firm. This is General Sarah Hunter, commander of the United Earth Fleet. Chaz-Zar, your empire is finished. We've destroyed your fleet, your forces, and now we give you one last chance. Surrender, or we will finish what we started. You will never again threaten Earth, or anyone else in this galaxy. The transmission ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving the bridge in a stunned silence. Chaz-Zar's eyes burned with disbelief. He had expected threats, grand declarations of destruction, but this was different. The audacity. The sheer confidence. It was the voice of someone who had already won. And it was coming from a child. How dare they, Chaz-Zar growled, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. These humans are insolent. Do they think they can command me like this? Still stepped back, his expression unreadable. It seems, Commander, that they have already begun to make their mark. We have never faced an enemy like this before. Chaz-Zar's mind churned with fury and confusion. He had commanded the galaxy's most feared fleet, crushed civilizations that had stood for millennia, and yet these humans, these children, were bringing him to his knees. They didn't even seem to understand the weight of their actions, the power they were up against. They were supposed to be easy prey. And yet here they were, on the verge of victory. "Prepare for the final offensive," Chaz-Zar growled. "We will fight until the last ship falls. We will not surrender." But even as he said the words, a nagging doubt wormed its way into his mind. Was it fear? Was he truly afraid of these humans? Of their resolve? He'd never considered the possibility that they could turn the tables, that they could become the very thing the galaxy feared. The transmission from Sarah Hunter had made one thing clear: Earth was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something deeper, something the Zara and every other empire in the galaxy had underestimated. They were fighting for their future, for their freedom. And that kind of determination, that kind of willpower, was a force no weapon could destroy. "Commander," Still said softly, "the enemy is advancing. We can no longer hold them off." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Chaz-Zar turned away from the bridge window, his eyes cold and calculating. He had underestimated humanity, and now, it was too late. He had no choice but to fight, to give everything in one final stand, or accept that the Zaran Empire's reign was over. He stood tall, despite the weight of his own realization. "We will not go quietly into the dark," he muttered. "We will make them regret this. All of them." The final battle had begun. Chaz-Zar's command ship, though battered and damaged, still held the pride of the Zara Empire. His fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable power, had been broken, but the Warlord's resolve remained unshaken. Despite the overwhelming odds, despite the human victory, Chaz-Zar would not be the one to concede. He would face them in the end. If he had to die, he would die fighting. There was no other option for a warrior of his stature. "Commander," Still said, breaking through Chaz-Zar's thoughts. "The human fleet is closing in. We've prepared everything we can. The weapons are primed. This is our last chance." Chaz-Zar's eyes locked onto the screen in front of him, where the human ships filled the view. They were disciplined, their formations tight and precise. Sarah Hunter's fleet had adapted, and now it was like a wall of unstoppable force. Every ship was focused, every pilot resolute. The defiance in their ranks made Chaz-Zar feel the weight of his own empire's failure more keenly than ever before. But he would not allow them to take the Zara Empire without a final fight. "Prepare all cannons. We'll make them regret underestimating us," he growled, his voice filled with bitter fury. "Do not let them reach our core." But even as he issued the order, his thoughts kept returning to those human children. The audacity of their rebellion had stunned him. There was no fear in them. It was as if they were led by a force far more powerful than mere tactics or weapons. It was a force born of survival, of something more primal and unyielding. And it terrified him. As the human ships advanced, they opened fire, sending volleys of energy blasts toward the Zaran fleet. The Zara ships retaliated, unleashing their full firepower in return. The space between the two fleets became a battlefield, a cataclysm of light and destruction. Explosions filled the void, and the silence of space was shattered by the sound of ships being torn apart. "Direct hit to the left wing," Still shouted, his voice rising in alarm. "Shields are down to 30%, Commander. We can't keep this up much longer." Chaz-Zar's gaze remained fixed on the battlefield. He could feel the end approaching, and yet he refused to back down. His fleet was failing, but he would fight until the very last ship fell. The Zara might be defeated today, but he would ensure that the humans would never forget the price of challenging them. Then, suddenly, a voice came over the intercom, sharp and commanding. "Chaz-Zar, this is General Sarah Hunter. You've lost." The words, though delivered with calm precision, hit him like a thunderclap. His eyes flicked to the holographic display once more. The human ships were moving into position, their cannons aimed at the heart of the Zaran fleet. It was a calculated move, an execution. His fleet was surrounded. "You fought well," Sarah's voice continued, "but this is the end of your empire." For the briefest of moments, Chaz-Zar felt a flicker of something unexpected: respect. Not for the humans as a whole, not for their race, but for the determination they had shown. It was the kind of determination that could turn the tide of wars, that could conquer entire galaxies. And it had conquered him. The respect, however, was fleeting. It was replaced with a deep, bitter anger, the realization that the Zara Empire was about to fall, not because of a superior force, but because of something far more dangerous, the resilience of the human spirit. Open fire, Chaz-Zar snarled, voice trembling with defiance. Show them what it means to face the Zara. But the order came too late. The human fleet fired once again, and this time, their firepower was decisive. The Zara flagship, battered and broken, could not withstand the onslaught. The energy cannons ripped through the ship's hull, and the internal systems began to collapse. One by one, the Zaran ships around Chaz-Zar fell, their shields failing, their weapons silenced. The light from their exploding hulls lit up the void like distant stars dying in an instant. On the bridge, Chaz-Zar stood frozen. His empire was crumbling, his fleet being reduced to nothing. He had no words, no plans, no actions left to take. All his life, he had been taught that power came from strength, from fear. But the humans had proven him wrong. They had shown that the greatest power in the universe wasn't in overwhelming force, it was in willpower. It was in the refusal to submit. And as the final blow was delivered, the Zara flagship disintegrating in a brilliant explosion, Chaz-Zar knew. His reign had ended. And the humans had won. The bridge was silent. Chaz-Zar's once proud empire was gone, and with it, the fear that had held the galaxy in its grip. But humanity had not just taken down an empire. They had changed the galaxy forever. As the dust settled in the cold expanse of space, one undeniable truth remained. The galaxy feared humanity. But it was humanity who had feared them all along.